Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sport. And some breaking news. Once again, the Boks have had to make a Friday change to the team. Willie le Roux ruled out through injury, and as a result, Aphelele Fassi will start in the number 15 jersey tomorrow evening in Cape Town. The only change to the Boks this week. No sort of change to potential bench splits or the likes of that. Another injury enforced change. And it's quite a significant one, I think, really, in terms of how the Boks might play tomorrow. Very different players, Aphelele Fassi and Willie le Roux. One more the creator, the other one X factor in themselves. And I think after a bit of a tough game last week for Aphelele Fassi, probably one of the most challenging games of his career coming up tomorrow. You know, he's really nailed on that 15 jersey. Last week was probably one of the games where he struggled a bit more than he has since he's come back. But he's got a big opportunity right away to get back to that kind of form that we've seen him in the last year, where he's just been so good. And in what potentially could be wet conditions, also a big test for him. And very excited to see how he comes through that test tomorrow evening. Before we get into it, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So this is actually quite significant, really, with regards to how the makeup of this team suddenly looks. Because I mentioned, very different players. I mean, it's funny how you think of, you know, rugby being 1 to 15 and you sort of have players in the same position, but as soon as you have a different player in that position, the complexion of the entire team just sort of changes, you know. And in terms of the complexion now, we've got far more attacking talent from an X factor, individual sort of brilliance. You know, we've got an extra runner, we've got an extra threat that can run with the ball, that can score tries, that has the ability to beat defenders. But we've lost a creator in Willie le Roux, you know, and somebody who's, you know, probably got a bit of better tactical kicking game, for example, somebody who maybe reads the game a bit better. And I think the biggest loss is obviously we probably lose about 85 odd caps, with Willie le Roux having over 100 caps or 100 caps on the dot. Aphelele Fassi, I don't think, probably a little bit less than 20. But so if you look at how the side suddenly looks, you know, it's going to be interesting to sort of see the role that Handre Pollard now takes on. Because traditionally, Pollard often starts with Willie le Roux. You know, those two as a combo work very well, where Willie le Roux often sort of comes into that first receiver position when he sees that there's something odd on the attack, and he becomes the provider. You know, he, at one stage, had the only person who had more assists than him in World Rugby in the last decade was Beauden Barrett. You know, that's how many times Willie le Roux sets up tries. So it's a big blow for the Boks with regards to the creativity they have on the field. On the other hand, we've now got a player who can really have a go from distance and from counter attack. You know, Aphelele Fassi has got X factor. He has got pace, explosive pace, and if there's a half gap, he can take it, and he can be really dangerous when you're on the attack. In terms of if he gets the ball in a bit of space, you'll use it and he'll exploit it probably a bit better than Willie le Roux will. For me, what's going to be interesting is the fact that they've gone with an Aphelele Fassi despite the conditions we're expecting to see tomorrow evening. Now, personally, I thought that Damian de Allende had a good chance starting this game, given the fact that it's wet, that it's at his home stadium, for example. I think Damian de Allende is a very solid all-around player. He's going to the high ball. He's got a good tactical kicking game. You know, he still can attack with his own sort of X factor. He's also probably a bit more of a distributor than Aphelele Fassi, having played a lot of rugby at 10, a lot of rugby at 12 as well. So I thought that he would have sort of fitted the bill. And it's quite interesting that not only did he initially not get picked, but even now, when you've got no Willie le Roux and you kind of want that creator at 15, they've still not gone to Damian de Allende. They've also not gone and looked at like starting a Sashafam Zulu in the number 15 jersey and maybe bringing on somebody into the bench. They've just made a complete straight swap, and Fassi will start at 15. And what for me is going to be interesting is that this is probably quite likely our, you know, 10-15 combination for the All Blacks. You know, right now, that number 15 jersey is in Aphelele Fassi's hands. You know, I mean, we talk about the fact that we're moving away from having players who kind of, inverted commas, own the jersey. But right now, you know, you're playing a World Cup final. I always use that as a measure. You're playing a World Cup final tomorrow, who's kind of playing? And maybe one or two players might adjust depending on the opposition, but generally there are players who you still think are your number ones if you're playing a World Cup final tomorrow. You might not agree. Lots of people get very triggered when I say this, but I still maintain it's true. You know, you still, when you're playing against like New Zealand or France or Ireland in a World Cup final tomorrow, you've got an idea of who your 23 would be and who you want in different positions. And I think right now, Aphelele Fassi would be in the number 15 jersey should we play in a World Cup final tomorrow. So it's a big opportunity for him. You know, I thought last week he showed a bit of, you know, what's really good about him, but he also struggled a little bit. And I think that we need to find sort of defensively sort out a bit of the back three. I mean, Aphelele Fassi did not attempt or make a single tackle last week, which when you concede how many tries, I think about 3 or 4 by the time he went off, is a little bit worrying. But I think it's also, maybe sort of indicative to how the Australia really sort of played on the break last week. And, when they got opportunities, they were often basically already broken the line, and almost the South African line was quite flat because it was on turnover ball. So I think that, Fassi's had to go through a lot in his career with regards to being dropped out of the box back in 2021, having to go back to the Sharks, having to work on certain things, having to really prove his way, that he'd improved. Then he's come back into the box and he's looked like $1 million. Last year, probably one of our most consistent performers, and was just putting in big performance after big performance. Even like improvement during the season, for example, during Wales, was really good under the high ball, but he kept having that sort of leg that kind of shot out that was going to get him in trouble. By the end of the season, we had sort of seen that he had actively worked on trying to reduce that as much, and we can just see the improvement in a player that's really hungry to try and get to his best level. And he looks a lot more comfortable, I think, in himself and playing the way he wants to play. He's now adding goal kicking to his game, for example. He's playing a bit of 10, for example, running a bit of 10. He's not going to actually play a 10, but I think he's trying to learn how to become a bit more of a distributor. So he's a player who I think attitude changed in the last couple of years, where he's really realized that he needs to be quite open to improvement. And I think he has learned how to take on the criticism that he's got in the early stages of his career constructively. He's always been, X factor. He's always been a player who can beat a man, who's got pace, who can create something out of nothing. He's never lacked the talent. But I think temperament something, and this is where we talk about experience. He looks like a different player from a temperament point of view. He's making better decisions, for example. He's taking on more responsibility as a fullback. And for me, that's the biggest thing when it comes to playing test match rugby. It's temperament. It's decision making in difficult times, decision-making, split-second decisions in high-pressure moments that separate the good players from the great players. And that's where Aphelele Fassi has really, really, for me, improved in the last few years, is his decision-making and his temperament has just looked so, so much better. And it's going to be interesting to sort of see how we maybe also adapt our play tomorrow. I think tomorrow, originally, we would have been playing a lot through Willie le Roux. Now, obviously, you're going to be playing probably more through Handre Pollard. I think Damian de Allende also will have a bit more of a role from a distribution point of view. But it's also something that we knew was kind of potential on the card. We spoke about this in our live show on Wednesday, that Willie le Roux wasn't a tracksuit, was not training. Aphelele Fassi ran at 15. So he has had the week's preparation in the spot. He did train there on Wednesday. He will train there today in captain's run. So it's not like he's sort of been thrust in. This was always quite a big possibility. In fact, it looked pretty inevitable when Willie le Roux did not train on Wednesday. I mean, usually they say if you don't train Monday, you don't play. So the fact that Willie le Roux then trained Wednesday, or didn't train Wednesday, and Fassi did, then obviously sort of shows you that this was always in the cards. But anyway, what do you think is going to make a big difference? How do you think this is going to change the way we might play tomorrow? Do you think it's a good thing, bad thing? And what do you think the role of Aphelele Fassi will be? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.